Joining us now is Dr. Abdul Al-Sayed, a doctor from Michigan and former gubernatorial candidate. He's now running in the Senate Democratic primary in Michigan. Abdul, thanks so much for joining us.
Good to see you.
It's always a privilege to be with you guys. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely.
And so I covered your race back in 2018. I remember this one dearly. This was, you had this bizarre case of Sri Thravan, I forget his last name. He's now a member of Congress. We can talk about him in a moment. Was a front runner in the race until he completely fell apart, exposed basically for fraud. And Gretchen Whitmer and you were then the kind of remaining viable candidates, and she ends up winning the race, becoming Michigan governor, now kicked around as this national figure. You're coming back in a bid for Senate. What are the differences that you've seen on the ground in this cycle versus 2018, and what makes it plausible for you this time?
Yeah, Ryan, I appreciate you covering the race then, and it's great to talk to you again now. I said something at the time that I think in the zeitgeist, folks weren't quite ready to hear, which is that Donald Trump himself is not the disease in our politics. He's just the worst symptom of the disease. And the disease is a system by which corporations and billionaires and would-be oligarchs can buy politicians, buy access to regulation that they basically roll back in ways that empower huge corporations in our lives so that they can suppress the wages we earn and charge us more for the things that we have to buy from them. And I think 8 years on, people are a lot more willing to see that, both because Trump got reelected. So we dealt with the symptom, but it came back roaring because we never dealt with the disease. And also because things have just gotten harder for people, whether it is inflation, whether it is the fact that the economy has made it so that the job you worked yesterday is just less secure for you tomorrow, whether it's the impossibility of ever imagining you could buy a home if you're under the age of 35, or how hard it's been to stay in your home if you're over the age of 65. It's the incredible medical debt that people have accrued, $225 billion, which is more than the GDP of the majority of US states. All of that has just made it harder to get by. I've been to 40 some different cities across my state, and no matter where I go, people just tell me, look, it just shouldn't be this hard. And I agree, which is why I'm running.
So, Doctor, I have a question for you about your potential role if you were to win the primary and to get elected. We had potential future colleague on, Alyssa Slotkin here on our show, and she would not commit to new leadership in the Democratic Party. I know you've spoken about that with Chuck Schumer. So give us an idea of the type of candidates that you would support for Democratic leader and why you think that's important.
I've got a clear set of things that I want to accomplish for Michiganders and for the American public. The first is I want money, particularly corporate money and special interest money, out of politics. The second is I want to put more money in people's pockets by standing up to big corporations and trusts, making it easier to build and scale a small business, make it easier to join and form a union. And I want to pass Medicare for all. And whoever it is who's given me the best commitment to standing for those causes and giving us the best chance at passing that legislation, they're going to earn my vote. Look, I've got a lot of questions about current leadership, but I'm not willing to tell you I'm going this way or the other without knowing who my options are. Because if they give me John Fetterman, I'm certainly not voting for him. So all of that is to say that I'm going to vote my conscience based on what I'm seeing. The last point here that I also have to call out is the fact that we've got to be honest about how we are misappropriating our money abroad, sending blank checks to fund genocides abroad when we've got hungry kids here at home who deserve so much more and so much better. So rather than starving kids abroad, I want to feed our starving kids here at home. And so I'm going to support leadership that understands that, that has the moral clarity on those issues. And I'm going to make a choice between the options that I've got for folks who are vying for that leadership.
I want to briefly play a clip from Cory Booker speaking about Zohran Mamdani, because I think that his race in New York plays an interesting role in this Michigan race that I'll ask you about. But first, let's roll this Booker clip F1.
About Mamdani, are you going to support him?
I have learned a long time ago, let New York politics be New York politics. We got enough challenges in Jersey. I got a governor's race. I'm supporting Mikey Sherrill. I got legislative races. That's where my energy is going to go going into November. New York City, I love you. You're my neighbor. You're about 10 miles from where I live. You guys figure out your elections. I'm going to focus on mine.
I mean, normally a Democratic politician asked about the Democratic nominee next door and says, yeah, of course I support the Democratic nominee. Hakeem Jeffries has declined to do so. Chuck Schumer, tons of other top Democrats have declined to do so. When I watch you campaigning out in Michigan, not only on the substance of your campaign, but also on the style of it. It feels similar. Like, you know, you're out there on TikTok and Instagram, you know, some quick cut edits, you know, talking to people on the ground. You know, Mamdani, you know, kind of launched his campaign just talking to people for several months, asking them, you know, why did you vote for Donald Trump, for instance? What was it that made you do that when you hadn't voted for him in the past? So how do you see yourself in relation to Mamdani, and how has his victory kind of influenced the Michigan race?
Ryan, let me give you a perspective from on the ground in Michigan, because I've been to 40 plus different cities now, done over 100 events in our state. And everywhere I go, it's this fascinating thing, because when I talk to Democrats over the age of 50, they're astounded that they see Democrats under the age of 50 at my events. And they're always like, how'd you do it? How'd you get the young people out? And I'm like, well, I'm talking about the issues that young people are facing in the language that young people are using about what they'd like to see as solutions. I'm talking about things like Medicare for all. I'm talking about housing affordability. I'm talking about AI coming for their jobs in ways that could indelibly change our economy because of the weird incentives we've created around the system, because again, it's driven by corporate greed and corporate profits. And so, yeah, they're coming because they see themselves in our political movement. And one of the interesting things that I think all Democrats should be paying attention to is we've lost young people. It's been a slow trickle, and now it's almost like a breaking of a dam when you look at 2024. So we probably want to pay attention to elections where young people turned out. And the most interesting thing about that New York Democratic primary is that there was an inversion of the usual demographics of the race. You saw young people coming out and voting at higher rates than their elders. That doesn't usually happen in our politics, particularly in Democratic primaries. So I would imagine that any Democrat who's committed to the future of the party would be committed to those people who are literally have the highest stake in that future, who are young people, and would want to learn a thing or two or get behind a movement that is including those young people in our politics. We're doing that here. We learned a lot from how they did that in New York. And if young people don't turn out for what you're talking about, you really, really need to think about the sustainability of what you're building.
Doctor, if you want to win this race, you're going to have to win a state where Donald Trump won by some 1.4% in 2024. What's your diagnosis of what the Democrats did wrong in 2024 to lose to Donald Trump?
Look, I'm really thinking about the lessons we can learn. And I think the challenge that we've had too often is that Democrats haven't been willing to actually go out and talk about the issues that people are facing. I think we tend to think about these elections in terms of left and right, but that's frankly a manufactured lens for the consumption of people who think about politics as a hobby. I don't think about left and right, and I don't think most voters think about left and right. I think about whether or not our politics service the people who've been locked out of the system, or they service the people who have locked them out. And I think what they're seeing in our movement, and the reason we're getting such a diverse grouping of people who voted for Donald Trump and people who have never voted in their lives at our events, is because we're talking to the people who have been locked out in language that critiques and identifies why they've been locked out and what it means to build a system where they are also included. If we're able to do that, I think we can win. And I hate to say it, Democrats too often have cosplayed the folks who have locked people out. They assiduously avoid issues that are really important to everyday people, but are uncomfortable to talk about. And I hate to say it, when it comes to Donald Trump, he's usually pretty good at just saying what comes to his mind, however insane and driven by his narcissism that it is. But it doesn't feel like he's trying to lock you out of something, even though his politics have done exactly that. And his policies have been terrible for a lot of these folks who have been locked out. So we've got to go where people are. We've got to speak in language that addresses the challenges that they face. They have to see themselves as part of our movement. And if we do that, we win. And more importantly, we can win the future of our politics, giving people more healthcare rather than taking away, making sure that the rich, the ultra rich, pay their fair share rather than being in a situation where they are keeping more and more of the value that's created by everyday folks who just want to be able to get by.
So there haven't been many polls in your race, but the ones that have been conducted seem to have you and Congresswoman Haley Stevens kind of neck and neck. And then you've got a state senator, I think former Media Matters person who's down at maybe 10 or 11%. Stevens had the support, strong support of APAC, and an enormous amount of money in her last race to beat a Democrat to get back into Congress. What is your plan if major APAC money comes in to Michigan heading into the primary?
So I'll say a couple things about this. First and foremost, I've been clear and I'm not afraid of APAC because to me, my moral integrity means everything. And I think any Democrat today should agree that MAGA billionaire money flooding Democratic primaries should not be what dictates who comes out of Democratic primaries. I want that to be something that everybody agrees to. Now, I know that others are probably not, but also say this, that on the merits of the issue, we have been watching as our taxpayer dollars have been subsidizing a genocide perpetrated by the most extreme element of another country who's received blank checks from us for a very long time. I think people look at their kids' schools, they look at their healthcare centers, they look at their infrastructure and they ask, why are we sending money over there to bomb out other people's infrastructures and their schools and kill their kids when we could be invested in our own children here at home? And there's something about the obvious nature of what is being done over there that I think a lot of Democrats ought to pay attention to. Because here's the thing about it. If you're not willing to see truth for truth and address and ask questions about the enforced language that MAGA billionaires try and enforce on the Democratic Party, then when you walk around saying that you're going to stand up to corporations and billionaires to make people's lives more affordable, people kind of question whether or not you actually have the fortitude or the moral clarity to do either of those things. And so I'm willing to go toe-to-toe on this question because I think it's right. And I'm also willing to go toe-to-toe on this question because it demonstrates that I don't back down to anybody. Whether it's MAGA billionaires funding their money through APAC on this question, or it's corporations like pharmaceuticals or insurance companies who want to tell us that we cannot actually have guaranteed healthcare in America. Those questions are one and the same. And I think we win on the courage of our convictions by stating our values clearly and having conversations with people in their VFW halls, their town halls, their living rooms about what we aim to do.
But doctor, does that include your fellow Democrats? I mean, you can call it MAGA billionaires. I don't think that's necessarily incorrect. There's a lot of Democrats out there who are APAC recipients. In fact, some of them are in Israel right now on an APAC-funded trip. Your potential future colleague, Alyssa Slotkin, was on this show, refused to say the word genocide, waffled a little bit on offensive weapons, who actually attended Colbert. Some of this is going to be uncomfortable. It will require you taking on people in your own party. Is that something that you're willing to do if you're elected?
I mean, I've been willing to do it from day one. To me, it is about what we do to deliver for the people in our state, how we're able to address the fact that their groceries are too expensive, their healthcare has become unaffordable. It's a principal cause of debt in this country, about how we're willing to stand up to the corporations who have rigged our system, and yes, the special interests who have rigged our system. I'm willing to stand up to anybody and everybody, and I have taken on my own party on this issue. I'm also glad to see that more of my party is starting to find moral clarity on this, but I want to ask us all a big question here. Imagine rather than in the summer of 2025, all of us were faced with these images of children whose ribs you could see through their skin and had to confront the reality that we were subsidizing a genocide. Imagine instead of having that moral clarity in the summer of 2025, we had that moral clarity in the summer of 2024. Maybe we would never be in a situation where an extra 10,000, tens of thousands of innocent people were killed. We wouldn't be watching as food was used as a weapon of war, and maybe, just maybe, the clarity on this issue might have changed the outcome of the 2024 election. Look, I endorsed Kamala Harris because I knew that Donald Trump would be worse, whether you're talking from the eyes of a child in Detroit or the eyes of a child in Gaza. But it was so frustrating to watch our party fail to take on the obvious issue of a genocide. And I am hoping that we are learning from this mistake and that we are willing to become the party of peace again. Because look, my second presidential election was, I got to vote for a guy named Barack Hussein Obama who bucked his party on the issue of war in Iraq. I think Democrats want peace. I think Democrats want to be on the right side of history. And I know the Democrats that I'm talking to every day, they want that desperately. And that's what we're talking about. And I think we're going to win a race because we're willing to have the moral clarity, whether it is against the pharmaceutical corporations who are raising people's drug prices or it's against the subsidies toward a genocide in Gaza.
And last question for me. Why do you think Trump won the state of Michigan, and what role do you think the genocide did actually play in the final outcome? And in particular, the Democratic support for it.
Look, I hate to say it because it is about moral clarity, it is about integrity, it is about strength. For us to say that we're going to stand up to corporate power, or we're going to stand up to lobbyists, or we're going to stand up to the oligarchs who are rigging and dominating our system, you've got to show that you can both see what the problem is and that you're willing to have the strength to take it on. But if you can't see a genocide being perpetrated and you don't have the strength to take it on, it forces people to ask whether or not you actually have the strength to take on all of the folks who have been rigging the system in ways that have made our lives more affordable. So I do think it played a really important role, and it certainly played an important role here in Michigan. But I think Donald Trump won via a combination of things. I think our party wasn't willing to face up to the fact that for far too long we didn't have a nominee who could withstand the role of the office. His handling of Gaza demonstrated that. I think we weren't able to mount a campaign that was true and honest to our convictions. And I think for a lot of people, they had to ask themselves, who is actually going to unlock the system that has locked me out? I am so terribly sad as somebody who both endorsed Kamala Harris and understands how dangerous Donald Trump has been even in his first 6 months, that Donald Trump won that election. And at the same time, the question for Democrats has to be, okay, so how do we go back and get the voters we lost? I think it starts with being 100% honest about what happened in 2024. It starts with being 100% honest about the ways that we were wrong on policy issues that are so clear. And it starts with being 100% honest about what it will take to stand up to corporate and oligopoly power that is rendering people's lives unaffordable. For us, to me, as someone who wants to be senator from Michigan, the question for me is always, what do we do with our tax dollars? Can we actually rebuild our schools? Can we provide everybody health care? Can we invest in our infrastructure? Can we make it easier for you to afford your basic needs? And that means that our money should be spent here, and it means that we are willing to stand up to power, whether those powerful people may agree with us on some issues or they may not. It is about calling it how you see it, and it is about being willing to stand up to the powerful who want to enforce a system that makes you double check or rethink the reality you see with your own eyes.
All right, well, we'll follow your race with great interest, sir. Thank you for joining us.
I appreciate you having me. Thank you so much.
Hey, if you like that video, hit the like button or leave a comment below. It really helps get the show to more people.
And if you'd like to get the full show ad-free and in your inbox every morning, you can sign up at breakingpoints.com.
That's right. Get the full show, help support the future of independent media at breakingpoints.com.